Welcome, my friends, and let me regale you with a tale of hope, redemption, and true love blooming in the most unexpected of places, the gritty streets of New York City. Enjoy the story. It was a crisp autumn evening in the rundown Bronx neighborhood of New York City. Jane Rodriguez, a petite 32-year-old Latina woman with soulful brown eyes, stood outside a dilapidated wooden church lugging a heavy cart piled with groceries. Tied to the cart was a large net bag of potatoes, a meager but welcome purchase from the local bodega for Jane's tight budget. Jane lived just a few blocks over, in a ramshackle apartment building, with her elderly mother, Evelyn. As a hospital janitor making barely above minimum wage, the affordable potatoes were a godsend now that the cooler months had arrived. Though Evelyn received a modest pension from her factory job decades ago, their limited funds were quickly drained by the prescription medications needed for Evelyn's debilitating illness, not fully covered by Medicare. Scrimping and scraping, Jane stretched their dollars by buying basic staples like pasta, tea, oatmeal, and the occasional luxury like chicken backs or pork stew for holidays. She hadn't bought herself a new outfit in over 10 years, still wearing tattered hand-me-downs from her ill-fated youth dating Victor, the bodega stock boy who got her pregnant and then vanished. The trauma caused Jane's miscarriage, leaving Evelyn as her sole remaining family. "Mom, I'm home," Jane called out as she wrestled the potato bag up the buckled staircase to their third-floor tenement apartment. Their building was one of the few left partially occupied in this blighted neighborhood, most former residents having fled for better surroundings long ago. The dingy kitchen soon filled with the aroma of boiled potatoes as Jane tended to her bedridden mother. "Dinner's ready, Mama. Let me fluff your pillows and clean you up first," she said, spoon-feeding Evelyn the bland but nourishing meal before placing a loving kiss on her wrinkled cheek. With Evelyn settled for the evening, Jane threw on her janitor's uniform and headed out for another midnight shift at the hospital. Gotham General Hospital squatted in the South Bronx like an ill-conceived fortress, its drab concrete facade looming ominously beside the smoldering ruins of the former New York Terminal's garbage transfer depot. Stray dogs and even vagrants frequently sought shelter among the twisted metal skeletons and mounds of refuse surrounding the facility, frightening staff and patients unlucky enough to catch a glimpse. Recent complaints poured into the city about the unsanitary blight plaguing this corner of the borough, but the bloated municipality, rife with graft and corruption under a pampered political machine, turned a blind eye to the plebeian outcries. Mayor Richard Two-Face Wilson, a slick incumbent Democrat with a penchant for taking bribes from corporate polluters and organized crime, arrogantly brushed off the rabble as he schemed to solidify his power base. At the end of her overnight shift on a brisk Halloween morning, Jane dragged a heavy rolling bin piled with trash and medical waste out the back delivery bay toward the dumpsters. As she strained to hoist the bags over the ledge, Jane was startled by a rustling sound from deep inside the dumpster, followed by a raspy groan. Cautiously, she peered over the rim and gasped at the sight of a filthy, emaciated figure lying unconscious amid the refuse, barely clinging to life. Without a second thought, Jane jumped into the dumpster and pulled the vagrant into the open air. She quickly cleared his airway and began administering CPR as the man's pale, sunken eyes fluttered open in a daze. "Code Blue! I need a trauma team, stat!" Jane shouted as she propped up the man's frail body and checked his vitals. Within minutes, a cavalcade of orderlies and nurses rushed out with a gurney, but Dr. Nigel Krupt, the notoriously callous head of the ER, pushed his way to the front of the stampede. "What's all this ruckus?" the balding, middle-aged physician barked in his signature indignant bravado. "Sweet seven surgeons! Not this human debris again. Rodriguez, I've warned you about bringing this grime through my ER." Jane stood her ground, glaring defiantly. "With all due respect, doctor, this man needs immediate medical attention. I had to improvise after finding him unconscious in the dumpster. He could have died." "Well, then let him die with dignity on the streets instead of fouling my emergency room." Dr. Krupt spat through clenched teeth as he aggressively shooed the orderlies away. "This is a hospital, not a damned homeless shelter. If you can't discern who is worthy of care, perhaps it's time we relieved you of your duties here." Permanently. As the gurney was wheeled back inside, Jane stood stunned and seething at such blatant disregard for human life. In that moment, her own tragic past came flooding back, the memory of being heartlessly turned away while pleading for help during her fateful miscarriage years ago. She fought back tears, recognizing the all-too-familiar sting of injustice and indifference from this callous institution. True to his word, Dr. Krupp made good on his threat the following week. As Jane clocked out after her shift, the hospital administrator stopped her in the lobby, an ominous-looking officially letter in hand. "Jane Rodriguez, I have here a notice of termination, effective immediately," the stout little bureaucrat stated flatly. "You're fired for insubordination, dereliction of duties, and conduct unbecoming of a Gotham General employee. Clear out your locker and get out." Jane was utterly floored, barely processing the words as her mind raced. With Evelyn's mounting expenses and no other incoming savings, how would they survive? She mechanically made her way back to her neighborhood, despondent and afraid. A few days later, as she dragged herself home from another fruitless job search, Jane was greeted by a shocking sight on her doorstep. A well-dressed man emerging from a gleaming black limousine with a bouquet of roses. As he slowly turned around, Jane's jaw dropped. It was the vagrant from the dumpster, now cleaned up in a dapper suit. Mr. Wilson?" Jane sputtered, recognizing him immediately as Richard Two-Face Wilson, the incumbent mayor. "But how?" The mayor raised his hand to pause Jane's disbelief. "Please, Miss Rodriguez, allow me to explain. You deserve to know the truth after your bravery and compassion saved my life." He went on to reveal a stunning conspiracy, a cunning plot hatched by the corrupt governor himself, Harrison Kingpin Stockridge. In a brazen power grab, Stockridge planned to slyly replace Mayor Wilson with an easily manipulated homeless double. Once in office, the doppelganger mayor would enact increasingly unpopular policies to undermine the public's faith in local government. With the people's trust in disarray and law enforcement hamstrung, Stockridge intended to seize control of the city for his own nefarious agenda. The scheme had gone horribly awry thanks to Jane's intervention at the dumpster. In a twisted series of events, Wilson recounted how he had actually been that initial vagrant Jane rescued, left for dead after being poisoned during a meeting with Stockridge's henchmen. Meanwhile, the governor installed the homeless man's double, who bore an eerily uncanny resemblance, to assume Wilson's identity. "If not for your selfless actions that morning, I may very well have perished," Wilson said, tears welling in his eyes as he grasped Jane's hands. "You are a true hero and humanitarian, Miss Rodriguez, and I am forever indebted to you." Over the following weeks and months, Mayor Wilson made good on his pledge. He not only provided Jane with a prestigious job as head of custodial services at City Hall, but also pulled every string to get Evelyn into an elite experimental medical program. To everyone's amazement, her declining health completely reversed after being outfitted with cutting-edge treatments and therapeutics. As Evelyn's new lease on life blossomed, so did an unexpected romance between Jane and the mayor. Deeply moved by her integrity, nurturing spirit and resilience through hard times, Wilson found himself falling for the woman who had saved him. Before long, he had worked up the nerve to make Jane a heart-melting proposal over a candlelit dinner at the city's finest restaurant. "Jane, you have shown me the beauty of the human spirit and the power of compassion against all odds," Mayor Wilson said, dropping to one knee and producing a stunning diamond ring. "You gave me a second chance at life, and in doing so, you've captured my heart completely. Would you do me the profound honor of becoming my wife?" Jane's hands flew to her mouth as tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. This was the happiness and security she had dreamed of since that fateful day she lost her first child, but thought forever unattainable as a struggling single mother in the unforgiving city. Looking down at the man she had plucked from the literal dregs and restored to humanity, she knew her answer without a moment's hesitation. "Yes, Richard, 1,000 times yes!" she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around him as a thunderous applause filled the elegant dining room. For Jane and Evelyn, their life of quiet desperation had blossomed into one of fairy tale fortunes, all thanks to one fateful act of selflessness. In a shocking twist of poetic justice, the corrupt Governor Stockbridge found his sinister coup attempt thwarted at every turn. Video evidence of his henchman's attack on Mayor Wilson, along with testimony from the homeless double, allowed authorities to dismantle Stockbridge's criminal enterprise. He was swiftly arrested, tried, and convicted on a laundry list of charges from racketeering to attempted murder. Stockbridge's downfall paved the way for a historic series of anti-corruption measures and grassroots political reforms in the city. Under Wilson's principled new administration, longtime blighted areas like Jane's neighborhood experienced a renaissance of civic rejuvenation, with new housing developments, parks, community centers, and investment in public services. For Jane and Mayor Wilson, their union represented the ultimate embodiment of the city's resurgence, a true rags-to-riches romance that captured the world's admiration. Their lavish City Hall wedding was broadcast internationally as a symbol of hope and perseverance, triumphing over greed and cynicism. The new First Lady never forgot her humble roots, continuing to volunteer at shelters and hospitals while advocating for marginalized communities. And though the pair would go on to have children of their own, Jane's mother Evelyn remained the cherished pride and joy of their family, reveling in her golden years as the matriarch who helped shape the mayor's saintly wife. For the first time in decades, their future burned brilliantly bright with the eternal flame of opportunity in the city that never sleeps.